Matthew continues, when his disciples heard it, they were exceedingly amazed. I think it's because they all know the Old Testament scriptures. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Job. Also, I forgot to mention, Daniel was super rich. During the time that Israel spent in Babylon, Daniel, through like 3 or 4 kings, was constantly the number 2 guy because he was working with God, and God gave him words of knowledge and prophecy so that he was favored. And what happens when you're the number 2 guy of a kingdom? You're super rich. And I think in Ezekiel, God even affirms both Job and Daniel and I think Noah as the 3 of the most righteous people ever, where if the destruction that was going to come to a city, if those 3 were there, only themselves would be saved, not even their families. Even if they asked me to save their own families, no, I wouldn't even honor that prayer. Just them. That's a big sign of approval for Job and Daniel. Of course, Noah. There's no real mention of Noah and his riches, just that he made the ark. So, yeah, riches are not evil. It's your trust in riches or your love of money and all that. And they were astonished out of measure. Luke, and they that heard it said, who can be saved? That does come next in Mark, saying among themselves, who can be saved? Matthew saying, who can be saved? The first part is not in Luke, so just between Matthew and Mark. And they were astonished out of measure. Matthew, when the disciples heard it, they were exceedingly amazed. Okay, so they have to hear first before they can become astonished. So Matthew first. When his disciples heard it. Heard it is Matthew and Luke. They were exceedingly amazed. And they were astonished. So I could put and before when his disciples heard it, or I could just leave it off. I think I'm just going to leave it off because the sentence before began with and I don't want to be repetitive. So I'll just go with, they were astonished. They were exceedingly amazed. Or I could use that and to combine these 2 statements. They were exceedingly amazed and astonished. Definitely going to go with they were from both. I could put this they here so that they can be all 3. They were. What should come first, astonished or exceedingly amazed? Maybe I could say exceedingly astonished and amazed. I think exceedingly should come first. Exceedingly amazed and astonished is best. Astonished out of measure. So yeah, it's even better now that I have exceedingly amazed first, because that should come second. Their astonishment was so great that it can't even be measured. It's so far beyond exceeding. It's off the scale. Now, saying among themselves. Matthew has saying. Luke has said. So I'm going to leave off said and put saying. Matthew and Mark among themselves. Mark only. Who then can be saved? That's all three. But Jesus beheld them and said to them, with men this is impossible, but with God all things are possible. And Jesus, looking upon them, says, with men it is impossible. Luke, and he said, the things which are impossible with men are possible with God. So Luke begins, and he said. Mark, and Jesus, looking upon them, says. Matthew, but Jesus beheld them and said to them. So Matthew and Mark are similar. Beheld them and looking upon them. They pretty much mean the same thing. Looking upon is easier to understand. I think saying but here doesn't quite make sense. It should be and. Yeah. Mark and Luke. And I'm definitely going to put Jesus, not just he, Matthew and Mark. I think it should be looking upon. It's just a little bit easier to understand. I don't think there's any extra meaning in beheld. Plus, looking upon is two words. I'd be cutting out only one word, beheld, instead of two words if I chose this. In Matthew, it's and said to them. Mark, it's just says. What does Luke say? And he said. So since Matthew and Luke have said, I'll go with that. You know what? If I have looking, I can't have and said to them. And Jesus, looking upon them, said. Yeah. But if it's beheld, he beheld and said. If I'm going to have and said, it would have to be and Jesus looked and said, not looking. That's why it says in Mark. So if I'm going to go with said from Matthew and Luke, it means I'd have to leave out this and from Matthew. And Jesus, looking upon them, said to them. I actually don't like this repetition. Jesus, looking upon them, said to them. It's not repeated in any of these Gospels. I don't want to make it twice just to combine them. I'm going to have Jesus' words be present, even though it's the minority, because I don't really need both. I don't need to go with majority. I'll just go with what Mark says. Matthew, with men this is impossible. Mark, with men it is impossible, and the it is in italics. So it's really just with men. And then I would have from Matthew, this is, then from both impossible. Luke says, the things which are impossible with men are possible with God. You know what? With men is all that's really there at the beginning in Mark. So I could fit that into Luke. The things which are impossible with men from Mark and Luke are possible with God. And the things is more inclusive than just with men. This is impossible or possible with God. I think it's a better proverb to say the things which are impossible with men are possible with God instead of just this, talking about one thing, are possible with God. And since the it is added in Mark, I really just have a choice between Matthew and Luke. So I want to go with Luke, the things, not just this. But then again, it does have at the end in both Matthew and Mark, but with God all things are possible. I may like Luke more, but Matthew and Mark have all things. Luke says the things, so just whatever. Anything. Matthew was there. Maybe I should just go with that. With men, this is impossible, but with God, all things are possible. Yeah, I'm going to have to go with that. I may like Luke a bit more, but all that I wanted to say is there in Matthew. So I'm going to go with that, Matthew. With men is all three. Just from Matthew, this is. Now from all three, impossible. I like how Mark has it more, but not with God. Because, or for, with God all things are possible. It is more complete of a statement in Mark.